Hello, it's our pleasure to welcome you to the RNCM Open Day. My name is David Horne and I'm the head of the graduate school, and I'm also the course leader for the Master of Music and also for the International Artist Diploma.
And I'm Simon Clarke. I'm Deputy Head of Graduate School, but also the course leader for the MPerf and the PGDIP AS.
We're going to give you a short overview of what we offer in the graduate school, and I will say from the outset that if there's anything that you'd like more information on, don't hesitate to contact either of us, and we will do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. We have many different programs in the graduate school, and the one thing that really defines us is actually the fact that we're all so completely different. We all come here with very different interests as musicians. We all perform in different ways, performing different kinds of repertoire. We have composers working across genres, and we also have musicians, both performers and composers, that are looking towards research degree level work as well. So we do whatever we can to meet all of those. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm both a classical pianist and also a composer, but I'm very passionate about the study of music, particularly relating music to how it is performed. And I have other interests as well. For example, composers such as Wagner and Puccini, who I absolutely adore. And if a year goes by where I can't go to a complete Wagner ring cycle, I'm usually quite disappointed. What about you, Simon?
Well, I'm a composer and philosopher. My musical specialisms are particularly the long 19th century, but also early 20th century French music. But this does extend, as my haircut might suggest, to metal as well. A fairly broad range of specialisms, certainly.
In fact, Simon and I are part of a group that we formed, and it's called Vulgar Display, and it brings together a classical piano trio and then a heavy metal trio, if there really was such a thing. So first of all, let's tell you how the program kind of fits into everything that you're doing. First and foremost, our students come to the graduate school because they're following their principal study discipline, either as a performer or a composer. And all of the modules that we offer that complement those degrees are thinking how they relate to it, but in very different ways. So some of the modules are much more practical, so things that you might expect like chamber music, for example, accompaniment. Others are practical but in a more compositional way, including for non-composers. So we actually have a module for people who want to do composition but who are not actually doing it as their principal study. Arranging is also very popular. And another popular module is contemporary songwriting. So much more in the popular music kind of genre, but taking actually students from all of our programs. We have other kinds of practical programs as well, such as Dalcrows, that are very much based around music and movement and how that kind of really kind of corresponds with how performing musicians and composers are thinking. So at the heart of what we offer, we're always thinking about how that's going to complement other things that you're going to want to do. We have a large number of students also who are interested in other types of research that inform their performance, so that could include music psychology, music education, and of course more traditional fields such as musicology. Simon, could you talk a little bit about some of the research offerings?
Well, yes, certainly. So research is a term that often causes a degree of consternation, but in actual fact we like to think of everything we do as incorporating research, as broadly speaking research. So of course that means that as performers we are undertaking research as we go about learning repertoire, considering how to interpret it and so forth. But of course that can be taken further as well, and in fact we can prepare through our research methods module for PhD study, acquiring the skills that we need to study, for example, as a performer or as a composer. But of course there are the more familiar and traditional dimensions to research as well. So if it's more musicological in its basis, then of course we can prepare you via dissertations and so forth for something that much more thoroughgoing. We also have research lecture recital. So a whole suite of possibilities that allow us to incorporate everything we do as practical working musicians with the other more arcane dimensions of thought and how that integrates into our practice.
One thing that a master's degree needs to have is actually an element of research training. And so what we did in the revalidation of our programs over a year ago is we've offered the maximum possible choice. So for those students who are actually really happy to write a dissertation, for example, particularly students that might have come from a university background, you have that option. But we also have a lot of students who are much more comfortable talking, presenting. So that's why we have the lecture recital option. We also have a repertoire project module where students are able to kind of really study the repertoire that they might be performing in their final recital or also composing for their portfolio, and it allows them to really reflect on that. So obviously in the real world that could be really useful when you're creating program notes, for example. But it's really important to remember that it's all about kind of offering that choice wherever possible. In addition to the choice, I mean, it's worth just remembering that we've got so many different students here. Nearly half of our students actually come from outside the UK, and that is in the graduate school, and we absolutely pride ourselves on integrating all of our students as much as we possibly can. I think we need to talk a little bit about the support that we offer for students. So we've got a fantastic students' union, and that works across all programs, including the undergraduate. But then we've got very specific support that is given to all of our taught graduate students. So for example, when you arrive here, you will actually be assigned a mentor. That mentor will be a full-time member of the college staff. The important thing is that mentor will not actually be from your principal study school. Why? Because we want you to feel that you can go to people outside your school for support as well. We're very aware that actually some of the most important people in your studies will be the head of your school, either the performance school or the school of composition. And we always encourage students to see the head of the school and the deputy heads of the school as their mentors too. But you have that in place. And then also for overseas students, we've started a peer-to-peer student mentoring scheme. So particularly for students who have never studied in the United Kingdom before, we will actually match you alongside another postgraduate student. And it can also be a student from overseas, but someone who's more familiar with the college. And there are people that you can also chat to as well. We offer a huge amount of language support as well, particularly to help you with coursework. And that includes everything from having our head of language support looking at your written work, but also helping you prepare in preparations. We even have quite a lot of offerings which are not for credit. So Simon, maybe you could talk a little bit about what we started a few years ago. We call this Introduction to Theory for postgraduate students.
Yes, indeed. So the idea here is to accommodate differing needs, which is to say we have students from all manner of backgrounds, and they may have studied at conservatoires before, they may have a strong grounding in, for example, theory, but many students we find don't necessarily, or perhaps studied it so long ago that it's something they really feel they need to refresh somehow and revisit. And so as a consequence, it's a very open course. We can cover fairly rudimentary material, but we can take it to advanced levels as well, depending on the need, depending on what's desired amongst that particular student body. And a word, incidentally, further about the peer-to-peer mentor scheme. The idea here is, again, to be as flexible as possible, because very often we find that international students, they won't have been to Manchester before, or at least they won't be familiar with the northwest of England, acclimatizing somehow a different diet, different social routine, working with students from all other backgrounds as well who are trying to integrate. So very often we'll find that students who are from two different international backgrounds who are working together somehow are best suited somehow to help improve their command of English, to negotiate the difficulties that Manchester will throw at them initially. And so we do try and be as flexible as possible and accommodate and foresee every need that we can.
And it isn't just that we have students from different backgrounds in terms of the country they come from, but even with the United Kingdom students, a lot of our students will be coming to conservatoire not necessarily from a conservatoire background. So they may not have had that kind of intense practical experience that you'd expect in a conservatoire. So we're really sensitive to ensure that all students feel that their needs are being met. Also, it's worth just pointing out how flexible the program can be. So for the master's programs, obviously they can be taken either as a 1-year or a 2-year program. The postgraduate diploma, advanced studies, is only a 1-year program, and that must be taken following a master's. But let's, for example, give you a couple of scenarios. What if you come here as an orchestral violinist and that is essentially your aim. You want to kind of build your skills as an orchestral violinist. Well, obviously you will have your principal study lessons. You would be taking part in orchestra. You would want to audition for the professional experience schemes with our local fantastic orchestras here. That, by the way, if you took it, you could also use as one of your modules, the professional placement module. You might then want to think about something like a lecture recital, where you were talking about different approaches to violin symphonic writing, for example. You might also even want to audit an undergraduate elective, maybe talking about, you know, the history of Beethoven symphonies, something that you think could complement what you're doing. So let's put that to one side. What if you come here and you're an oboe performer, but you're really interested in historically informed performance practice? The point is that almost everything you study, including the modules you take, could actually complement that. You might want to take chamber music, where you formed your own group that was going to perform a particular kind of repertoire that supported what you were studying. You might want to write a dissertation, if you were inclined to do so, that was kind of exploring the performance implications of that kind of repertoire. You then might want to think about your final recital, where actually you have complete choice. You might only want to perform, for example, in a Baroque oboe. I'm giving two kind of very, very different examples. You might also, for instance, be a singer, and essentially the main thing that you want to do is build your skills as an opera singer. Obviously, we have a fantastic opera program. You have coaching with some of the greatest operatic singers in the world, often visiting. A lot of the full-time teaching staff here and the part-time teaching staff here are singing in operas, you know, internationally. So you would get a lot of that preparation. You might want to do a lecture recital based on operatic repertoire. So the point is that no one student will tend to do the same thing within their program. Everyone will be doing different things. And really, our job as the program leaders in the graduate school is to ensure that you can do as much of that as possible.
Yes, indeed. And so if, as a further example, your interests are particularly diverse, particularly varied, and perhaps you're, for example, a singer, but perhaps you're interested in empirical work as well. Perhaps you're interested in, for example, exploring memorization techniques, for example, or performance anxiety. Or you may have a scientific orientation to a point and you want to explore acoustics that much further, or music perception, phenomenology, something along these lines. We can accommodate all of this alongside your principal study interests, integrating it into your holistic approach to being a contemporary musician.
And I think just to sum up, as I said right at the start, as I think we've really reinforced, everything about our programs is designed to offer flexibility. That even includes timetabling. So, for example, you might be a pianist who really wants to be practicing 4 to 5 hours a day. If that's the case, you'd be thinking very carefully about the kinds of modules that you chose. You'd be thinking how often they meet. So we give you that kind of information right at the start so you can really make informed choices. And ultimately, we are aware that everyone is going to come from diverse backgrounds, and yet we seek to have our students make their own way through the programs, to make things happen. We offer lots of opportunities. We offer opportunities for concerts, for external placements. There's always so much going on. It's almost bewildering. There's so much happens in this building on any given day. But the really important thing is that the postgraduate study is about you, and it's about you as the individual, and we will all work as hard as we possibly can to make that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.